All right. Welcome, you guys, to episode 4 of American Orthodoxy. I'm your host, Benjamin Michael. Thank you guys for making my first couple episodes a huge success. My first episode is still running on the algorithm. It just hit 7,000 views, which is pretty insane for a first ever video on YouTube. And that's all thanks to you guys. My clips have been going crazy over on Instagram and on X. And so thank you guys for helping to push it out. Please like the live. Let's try to get it out there to the algorithm. I really want this show to be something that people can resonate with, that are looking for something that is both American and Orthodox, and that's why I named it American Orthodoxy. I had an excellent episode yesterday with my dear brothers over at World War Now, Conrad and Dimitri, and that will be released in the coming days. So shout out to those guys. They're awesome. I'm definitely going to have them on the show eventually to discuss Russia and maybe some of the prophecies. Those guys have excellent content, so make sure to go check them out over at World War Now. So this is going to be sort of the first normal episode, if you will. I'm going to be kind of using an itinerary for this one in the sense that I want to go over some current events. And then I want to talk about race, which is why I titled this video Orthodoxy, the White Race, and then Fr Seraphim Rose, who has just been officially canonized, and we're going to go over that news. He is now St Seraphim Rose. I know many of you guys, myself included, are very influenced by Father Seraphim, St Seraphim, and so we're actually going to be reading some of his quotes as well today. So first and foremost, please, like I said, like the live. Please push it out there to the algorithm. And then also, I officially hit my viewer count necessary to at least apply for YouTube monetization. Now, through the intercession of St. Michael the Archangel, Lord willing, hopefully I will get approved. It's in the process of being approved because, like I said, I'm trying to do this full time. And so I appreciate your guys' support. I've pinned the Superchat link in the comments. Right now, it's only through Streamlabs, so I apologize for that because all they take is PayPal. I also have my Venmo in my description. All that being said, I am at Real Ben Michael on all platforms, so please give me a follow, especially on Instagram and Twitter. All right, without further ado, let's dive into some of the current events for the week. I was traveling on Saturday, so I didn't get to do a show, so we have quite a bit of stuff to cover, at least as far as the major events that took place over the weekend, and since my last show on Thursday, where I did my debate review of Me versus Voice of Reason from January of 2024. Now, a lot of you guys saw there was a event that took place a couple days ago by an organization called America First United. Now, it seems like they were LARPing Fuentes's brand, or at least they were trying to kind of LARP his brand in the sense that it seems like he had nothing to do with the event. There's actually clips of him beforehand when he was asked directly about America First United, and he explicitly said, "I don't know what that is. Please do not associate that with me." And so a lot of people were falsely attributing it to Fuentes, and people misunderstood my post. I posted about it, and I said it was pathetic that the Groyper generals, the big name influencers who've built their platforms off of Nick's name, were sort of trying to. They were basically using the event to shill Nick, and Faith was in there talking about how demanding that we recognize Nick as the leader of America First. Which, by the way, leaders don't need to be reminded that they're the leader. The people just recognize them as the leader, especially not reminded by women. So anyways, the event was kind of funny because people were shilling Nick throughout the event, and a lot of them were big name Groypers who have again built their entire platform off of Nick. And just to have him, shit on the event afterwards, as you guys probably saw, he posted in his Discord, I believe it was his Discord or his Telegram. I can't remember which one it was, but he posted about it that he completely disavows the event. The event was such a shit show that that even after the fact, you have Virillium going out and posting a video, basically throwing Amy under the bus, who was the one who put together the entire event. Now, a lot of you guys probably saw this image here. This was sort of the famous image that went viral But this is not this is obviously ridiculous. It doesn't seem to me like it should be this hard to have a movement that is actually America first, that is Christian in its DNA. What we don't want is a bunch of fat people, e-girls, Muslims, abortionists, who just happen to all dislike Israel. That's not the America First movement that anybody wants. That's not the nationalist movement that anybody wants on the right. And if you do want that, I'll just be honest. Like, I don't want to be associated with you. To be honest, I see these as a lot of these issues are equivalent with that of Israel. And so, no, I'm not going to ally with someone who believes in sacrificing babies to Moloch. I'm not going to ally with someone who believes in the replacement of my people in my homeland. These are not concessions that I'm going to make just in the name of dethroning Israel. I believe that those are issues that are on the same level as Israel. And so we need to work with people that are aligned with the core tenets. And it's pretty obvious that this is not one of those individuals. A lot of people didn't even realize that it wasn't just Muslims and anti-ICE activists that they had. They had two abortionist candidates, Jose Vega and Mark Moran. Both of them are either independent or Democrat. Mark Moran is independent, and then Jose Vega is Democrat, and both of them are pro-choice, and they have expressed this view explicitly. So yeah, this event was a total shit show for obvious reasons, and I think a lot of people are going to be skeptical now going forward of any movement that has, America First attached to it, that isn't endorsed by Nick explicitly. And so personally, I'm going to try to start using American nationalist more, because I think that's also even a better description of sort of my paradigm. And I don't want this movement to be any sort of LARP on another movement. This is an organic movement. I built my entire platform organically. And my brand from the get-go has been very clear, and that's pro-America and Orthodox Christian. And so I built that from the ground up. It's been organic from the beginning, and it's going to continue to be organic. And I don't see a lot of people using the label American nationalist, and that would definitely be something that I consider myself. And so kind of going forward, I'm going to try to use American nationalist rather than America First, not because Nick owns that label, because it actually dates back to the early 1900s. But rather just I want people to see this movement as something that is organic and unique to any of the other movements out there, because that's truly what it is, in the sense that it's Orthodox in its DNA. And I've talked about this with with Codriano's movement being more spiritual than political. And really, that's what it has to be. It has to be about spiritual healing first and foremost before it can be political, because the reality is, if it's not spiritual first and foremost, it can be easily hijacked. It can be easily twisted to other ends, as we've seen happen with just about every other nationalist movement. And it's really interesting, all this stuff with the SPLC that came out, because Codriano actually was very concerned about that. I actually have the quote here. This is on page 140 of For My Legionaries, but he says, "I was afraid that Jewry and Masonry getting wind of the situation might initiate a pseudo-nationalist organization in order to tap the people and thus divert the movement into a dead-end track. In any case, this would have created such confusion in the minds of the Romanians that it was not at all to be contemplated." So he's basically saying that, look, these entities are going to attempt to create a pseudo-nationalist movement that's designed to fail. Now, whether or not that's the Groyper movement, I don't know, but it is certainly the case that the SPLC attempted to do this with other organizations. Groypers, don't attack me. I'm not saying the SPLC was funding you. I have not seen any evidence of that. All I'm saying is that it is very clear that there are these pseudo-nationalist movements, and I would argue that one that endorses Muslims, abortionists, anti-ICE advocates, this is clearly a pseudo-nationalist movement. Either they're doing it for free or they're funded. I don't know. I saw several people after the event express regret for attending the event, including Beryllium and Joel Webbin. I believe Kai was there as well. I have a lot of respect for both Joel and Kai. And it seems like they were maybe misinformed as far as the nature of this event, and they have expressed regret afterwards. So all this to say, our movement is unique in the sense that we are using the label American nationalists. I think it describes what we're after more directly. And more importantly, it's American Orthodoxy, meaning that the DNA of our movement is particularly Orthodox. And although I am willing to ally with those that are not Orthodox, that share common values, such as the triune God, and we have saints that have expressed this, that there's a unique category for those that are baptized in the name of the Trinity and things of that nature. So this is not far-fetched from as far as the patristic witness, both the neo-patristics and the ancient ones. So I'm willing to ally with, high church Protestants and Roman Catholics politically. I see them as political allies, and so in that sense, they can be part of the movement. But the DNA of this movement, I want to be very clear, is Orthodox. It is Orthodox in its very nature, and it will always be that way. I've expressed from the beginning that my desire is for America to be holy, as St. Paisios prophesied. And we see the beginnings of this with the monasteries of Elder Ephraim, and of course with the writings and the influence of St. Seraphim Rose, who we're going to talk about later. So that was that America First United, quote unquote, event that was a total flop and a complete optical disaster. And I want nothing to do with that. And I think even people that attended are expressing the same concerns. All right. So a couple other things that happened over the weekend. So I found this to be kind of interesting. So a lot of you may have seen Trump's tweet or his post on Truth Social, and he goes over the lifetime contribution per migrant. And this is looks like a study that was done in the Netherlands in 2024. And it goes over the different demographics and whether or not they're net takers or net givers. As you can see, the North Americans, the Scandinavians, Oceania, Japanese, and the Brits are all net givers to the economy. And the Somalians, Caribbeans, Middle Easterns, Latin Americans, Sub-Saharan Africans, and Central and North Africans are all net takers from the economy. Now, I don't understand. It seems like Trump will post a lot of this stuff, and then it's like, okay, what are you doing about it? I will say, according to bookings, we have reached net negative migration for the first time, I believe, in American history, at least modern American history. And, credit where credit is due there, but we're not seeing the mass deportations. We're not seeing the denaturalizations that we were promised. I mean, the entire campaign was run on mass deportations. And Tucker pointed this out at one of his recent episodes. I mean, they had rallies in New York City, people that are native to New York City that were rallying for mass deportations. This is the leftist capital of the world. And people want mass deportation so bad that they're rallying for it even in New York City, of all places. So this should be like the number one priority. And this is another thing. There's the clip of Fuentes going around saying that immigration is a dead issue. Bro, immigration is the issue. There is no issue greater than immigration right now in America because it's a state of emergency. We are losing our country. We are foreigners in our own land, which God says is a judgment against a nation. When he talks about this in Isaiah in the case of Israel. When you become a foreigner in your own country, that is a judgment against you. We are experiencing judgment. So we must repent and we must face this issue head on, that we are becoming minorities in our own homeland. And there is no America. There is no America without traditional American identity, which is primarily white and Christian. That's just a fact. I've gone over this with the pre-1965 demographics. Now we're still a majority, just barely a majority. But anyone blackpilling on this and saying, I'm going back to bed. Oh, if immigration's the issue, I'm going back to bed. Please do, actually. Please actually get the hell out of the way. Because some of us actually still care about saving our country. Some of us actually still care about this issue. And I will never give up on this issue. I don't care if we're 10% of the population. I will never give up on this issue. I refuse to bend the knee on my entire people's heritage, thousands upon thousands of years of heritage that were then brought over to the United States a couple hundred years ago, because we are the continuation in many ways of the British Empire. So No, I will never give up on this issue. And we need to be applying pressure to the administration. Obviously, Trump will post about this stuff and he'll say some like funny stuff about Somalia, but he doesn't actually do anything about it. So when are we going to get the mass deportations that we were promised? So Ilhan Omar has been making some waves in the news, and this actually goes right along with what I was just talking about. And I want to play a few clips from her because I really want to show like what the mentality is of these foreigners that come into our land and effectively treat our home like an economic zone. And they're really shameless about this stuff. So first I'm going to play this clip.
The idea that this is a white nation that needs to be preserved is a fascinatingly disgusting view, because this country is one for the many. The idea that this is...
So first of all, she's referencing E Pluribus Unum. E Pluribus Unum was about many colonies becoming one nation. It has nothing to do with immigration. See, this is what this immigration propaganda campaign has done. They've inserted all of these slogans, right? So E Pluribus Unum is very old, but again, it means from many colonies, one nation. That's what it's talking about. It has nothing to do with immigration. And yet this is considered part of our DNA, our identity as Americans in the modern era because of these propaganda campaigns that push things like Melting Pot, which shows up in 1908 from a Jewish playwright, like the New Colossus poem, which shows up again around the same time as that playwright from a woman named Emma Lazarus. Nation of Immigrants, which doesn't show up until the 1950s and 60s. But these are considered like the very DNA of our country. Nation of Immigrants, E Pluribus Unum, Melting Pot, Bring Me You're Tired, You're Poor, You're Hungry, That Long to Breathe Free. These are the slogans that we've been taught is what makes America America. And yet they're all part of a propaganda campaign, or they're taken out of context. And these are the things that are weaponized by people like Ilhan Omar, who don't give a shit about the United States. And I will prove that right here with a video of her talking about Somalia. This is insane. This is insane.
danger laga gelin karin. Marka waxaan reer Minnesota iyo Soomaalida meel kasta ku nool adeerkaya hadda mar dhow ka hadlaayay idinkaga hambalyeynaya sida aad iskugu wada duuban tihiin, sida aad kulligiin u garab istaagteen madaxweynaheena, because wuu u baahan yahay in kulligeen aan garab istaagno. Soomaaliya waa Soomaali, Soomaaliya waa hal, walaalaan wada nahay, dhulkeena lagama kala qaybsanaayo, dhulal baa naga maqanaan raadsanaynaa insha Allah maalinta.
Do you see this? Ethiopia and Kenya have stolen and continue to occupy Somali region and state, which belongs to Somalia. And then listen to this.
Laakiin inta aan haysan hadda lama kala qaybinaayo. Marka waa mahadsantihiin dhammaantiin sidaad ii sharaftiin oo markasta aad iigu soo dhawaysiin. Ilaahay idin sharfo. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
So for her homeland, Somalia is for the Somalis. For Somalia, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay that her people remain the majority. Because, it's their homeland and Somalia is for the Somalis and foreigners don't get to come into Somalia. Do you see how all of these people that come here and preach this nonsense that anyone can be an American and that we are a nation of immigrants and a melting pot and all these things, they don't have that view about their home nation. They don't want their home nation, they don't want their people to become minorities in their home nation. It's only America. It's only the West, because they do the same thing in Europe, by the way. They were able to accomplish this even without the propaganda slogans in Europe, because Europe is definitely not, no, those are definitely not nations of immigrants. They can twist it here in the United States, given that for the last 130 years, we did have a lot of immigrants come in from Europe. That's true. So they can take that and twist it into saying that we have no identity whatsoever and that America is an idea. But guess what? They're doing the same thing in Europe. They're doing the same thing in the UK. They're doing the same thing in France. You have people on the street saying that the UK is a nation of immigrants. What the hell are you talking about? What? The UK is a nation of immigrants? Are you out of your mind? And then they have the audacity to say that they need immigrants, that they can't even prosper without immigrants, that it's actually these third worlders coming in and living on welfare. They're actually doing native Brits a favor by coming there, which is all built on this false presupposition that we need to constantly increase our population, which is nonsense. It's total nonsense. It's a total psyop. You do not need a perpetual population increase. Slight population decrease is fine. We're seeing it happen in Japan. They take a slight economic hit, and in return, they receive their national identity back. They don't lose their national identity. America was a powerhouse when it was 100 million. America was a powerhouse when it was 200 million. We don't need perpetual increase. We can decrease at a non-perpetually decrease our population and then stabilize at a certain level with incentives. This is not that hard to do. But we have been taught that you need to constantly increase your population. It's total nonsense. And that's their justification for bringing all of these third world migrants into the UK and into the United States and into Australia and into New Zealand. It's all based on a false misconception that you need perpetual increase of population. But here's a white pill. So Ilhan Omar has been, the reason why I bring her up is because she's been making headlines for other reasons. She is in deep shit, to be honest, with a lot of the fraud that was happening in Minnesota. It's possible now they're placing her potentially under investigation for being complicit in one particular restaurant that was responsible for $250 million. By the way, I think the number at the end of the day, when it was all said and done, was $9 billion in Minnesota fraud. That's where I was born and raised, by the way. They've destroyed my home state. They have destroyed my home state. I go home, it's like I flew into freaking Somalia. Did you know that Burnsville, Minnesota is the second highest concentration of Somalis in the entire world, behind only Somalia? It's the only place where there's a higher concentration of Somalis. Minnesota, United States. By the way, it's like freezing cold there. I have no idea why they would want to be there. Well, it's all because of the state's incentives for migrants, and I think it's the vast majority of them are on welfare. It's the majority of first-generation migrants that are on welfare, and Minnesota just hands it over to them, while native Minnesotans just get completely cooked. $9 billion in fraud? Are you kidding me? $9 billion with a B. So anyways, so this is the clip here. I'll play this.
Minnesota lawmakers are asking Congresswoman Ilhan Omar to respond by Tuesday regarding questions about a statewide child nutrition fraud scheme. The lawmakers are seeking Omar's written and electronic communications involving the state's Feeding Our Future program, which misused millions of dollars in taxpayer funds. State lawmakers specifically hoping to look at Omar's correspondence with the owners of the Safari restaurant. State lawmakers point out Omar was a regular at that restaurant, staging many campaign events there. Its owners recently pleaded guilty for their role in the $250 million fraud scheme. Now, Omar's team and allies have largely framed allegations trying to link her to fraud as politically motivated and not substantiated. But for more on this, we are joined by Minnesota State Representative Kristen Robbins tonight. She is
Sorry, was muted there. So she's in trouble. And last I saw, right before I went live, I saw that she has not turned in those documents. So she was required to turn in some documentation for investigation, and she did not comply with the timeline given to her. And so that's not something an innocent person would do. I don't know about you guys, but if I was innocent, I would have no problem turning in documentation that's being requested of me. So she is in trouble. She's in trouble. Hopefully we can get her denaturalized and deported, because Muslims do not belong in the United States, and especially not Muslims who hate the United States. Can someone explain to me why you're coming here when you hate it here? Why is it that Ilhan Omar is sitting here complaining about white majority countries, saying the greatest threat to the United States is white supremacy? You came here. What are you talking about? You could have stayed in Somalia. The irrefutable response to any of these people who come here and just start shitting on our homeland is go back. Why are you here? If you hate it so much, go back. This is our homeland, not yours. You call yourself a Somali American, hyphenated American. So you're Somali first before you're American. If there was a war between Somalia and the United States, you would side with Somalia. There's clips all over of guys who live in the UK, live in the United States. They're asked straight up, if there was a war between the United States and your home country, who would you side with? They always say their home country, because they're not American. They don't even have loyalty to the United States. All they do is they come here, they complain about white people, and then they take our money, and then they go back. If we're lucky, they go back. Sometimes they just stay and perpetually complain until they die. All right. How are you guys doing? You guys doing all right? So those are a couple of the current events. I'm going to shift gears into Orthodox current events, something a little bit more edifying, because we have some good news to cover today. We have two different things that we're going to cover as far as Orthodox news before we dive into the main event on the topic of race. Here, I'm just going to answer this question here. So he asks, hey man, what would you recommend for someone who lives in a Pentecostal household and wants to attend Orthodox church? I don't want to be divisive by going, but Pentecostal doctrine is just so wrong. I mean, it depends. Like, are you a kid, or are you like a teenager and your parents, your parents are Pentecostal? If that's the case, it's a difficult situation. A lot of times you just have to kind of do what you can until you're old enough to be able to drive yourself to church. So that means, like, hey, you can do your prayers. You can get an Orthodox prayer book. You can get an Orthodox study Bible. Usually your parents aren't going to complain about you reading the Bible. So you can get an Orthodox prayer book, get an Orthodox study Bible. You can always watch the live streams of liturgy. If you're able to make it to liturgy, definitely try to go, and just, you can just say, hey, I'm looking into this. It's kind of cool. That's an old Christian tradition. Dates back 2,000 years. I kind of want to check it out. That's kind of an easy way to approach something like that. Thank you guys for the super chats. So like I've been explaining, not monetized on YouTube yet. Currently under review. So pray I get accepted, because that's a huge thing. So right now my super chats are through Streamlabs. through Streamlabs, and the link is pinned. Also, please like the live. Please subscribe to my channel. My channel's been gaining a significant traction, so thank you guys for the subscriptions and for the likes and super chats. All right, so let's move on to something a little bit more edifying, some good news that's going on here in the world, particularly in Ukraine. So first of all, shout out to UOJ. I do work with these guys a little bit. They are extremely reliable. So there was some question marks around St. Seraphim's canonization, which, like I said, literally just got confirmed right before this. In fact, let me start with that because that is a main event here, and we just had some good news on the topic. So St. Seraphim Rose, as reported yesterday by UOJ, has been officially canonized by ROCOR. Well, so notice they did say that it's unofficial until a statement is issued, which just happened. So I'll show you guys the official statement for those of you that are maybe concerned that it's not official. So here we go. So here is the official. And I'll go ahead and retweet it so you guys can see it if you'd like. So this is the official ROCOR letter formally saying that Father Seraphim Rose has been canonized as a saint. So glory to God. St. Seraphim Rose, pray for us. That is a long time coming. Many of you guys have been significantly influenced by him. We're going to go over some of his work here in a minute, but I did want to share that. Some other good news across the world. So this one is in regards to Ukraine. So the 6th Administrative Court of Appeal on April 6th, 2026, granted the appeal of Kiev Metropolitan of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, overturning a lower court ruling and invalidating key actions tied to a state religious exemption. The UOC's legal department later issued clarifications, arguing that public claims misrepresented the scope and meaning of the appellate jurisdiction as supporters of the state-backed Orthodox Church in Ukraine. For context, in January 2023, Ukraine's State Service for Ethnopolitics and Freedom of Conscience released the results of a government-ordered exam initiated after a directive from President Zelensky and National Security and Defense Council decision, concluding that the UOC remained part of the Moscow Patriarchate despite its 2022 Declaration of Independence. So the reason why this is significant is because they're able to weaponize this. They're able to weaponize the fact that they're officially still part of the Moscow Patriarchate, even though they've declared independence. But because they're simply in communion with them and because they're the mother church, Ukraine, up until this point, has been able to argue, the Ukrainian government has been able to argue that they are indeed a branch of the Moscow Patriarchate and under their influence. And so they can effectively treat them, because it's a time of war, they've been not allowing them to have basic religious freedoms like being able to hold services. I mean, they had young men get drafted to the front lines, and then after they were killed, their funeral services were getting raided by the Ukrainian government. When they're having a freaking funeral service for the young men that the Ukrainian government had just sent to the front lines to get killed. They're sending priests. I mean, priests take a vow of pacifism. Priests they cannot have a combatant role. So the only request of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church has simply been for them to have a non-combatant role, and up until this point, they've not been permitted to do that. So that's why this decision is so significant, because hopefully a lot of that stuff will end. And by the way, entities like the United Nations have acknowledged this persecution of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. I keep getting called a Russian spy for advocating for the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, the canonical Orthodox Church there. And when in reality, the United Nations themselves has acknowledged this persecution. Now, glory to God, we had an event. A lot of this stuff that's been happening, Metropolitan Arseny, finally being released, and likely this reversal of this court decision, these are things that are a result of our, hopefully it's a result of our lobbying efforts in DC. We got a couple hundred people together. We went to talk to some congressmen in DC a couple months back, and right away we started seeing a difference. We started seeing these type of things happen because the United States has geopolitical pull. So even though we're not an Orthodox superpower yet, we will be, even though we're not an Orthodox superpower yet, it doesn't take much grassroots lobbying for us to make a difference of those being persecuted that are Orthodox across the world. We were able to accomplish this with just a couple hundred people, grassroots, showing up, having some conversations with congressmen and congresswomen. That's all it took. And shout out to Ben Dixon and Catherine Whiteford for hosting that event. It was a huge success. Love those guys. I'm involved with them through the Society of St. John, which hosted that event. So glory to God for this decision. We pray that it will end much of the persecution that has been happening in Ukraine. So a couple other current events, some things that just happened literally within the last couple days that I want to go over. So one of them was a Supreme Court decision, and then the other was a bill that was up for a vote. So I'm going to play this clip here so you guys can see this. This is one of those examples of like, how in the world was this allowed in the first place? And this was a House vote here. Actually, I don't know if I really need to share the clip. Basically, the House just passed the Deporting Fraudsters Act, which resulted in the automatic deportation for all illegals who commit welfare fraud. So this is one of those things, and 186 Democrats voted no. So 186 Democrats literally voted for illegals, so they're already here illegal, and they commit welfare fraud. And 186 Democrats voted against having them deported. Like, this is one of those bills that's like, how in the hell was this like ever allowed in the first place? So you could be an illegal migrant, you could be here illegally, and not only on welfare, but committing welfare fraud, and you don't get automatically deported? How in the world was that even allowed in the first place? That's insane. So yeah, this is one of those things that it's like, I don't know if you guys feel this way when you read particular, stuff in the news, and you're like, how in the world was this ever allowed? How is this ever allowed? So this is what time it is, ladies and gentlemen. We're dealing with our own congressional representation voting against deporting illegal migrants who are here stealing from you. 186 members of the House voted against deporting illegal migrants here stealing from you. You, American citizens. That's what time it is, ladies and gentlemen. That's what time it is. So you guys understand why I'm so passionate about these topics. My people are being replaced. They're being robbed. And nobody seems interested in actually solving the problem. So this is why this is why I care about this issue. I posted a video, last piece of news here. I posted a video about the gerrymandering case that was over on over in the Supreme Court. They basically, what was happening, I posted a video about this, so I go into detail. If you guys want to check that out, it's over under my videos. I posted this video and discussing how the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 against the Voting Rights Act permitting racial gerrymandering. So Louisiana and other states in the South were basically, it's basically like affirmative action for redistricting. That was basically what this was. What it was resulted in was a redistricting that pushed black votes and Hispanic votes above their white counterparts. It was literally affirmative action for voting. And somehow this wasn't a violation of the 14th Amendment, which demands that you cannot discriminate on the basis of race. So it seems like, this is what this seems like, is the 14th Amendment, the Civil Rights Act, all these things are not actually about equality. They're about anti-white racism. That's what they're really about. Because when the Voting Rights Act, also in 1965, was passed, and it permits redistricting on the basis of race that boosts non-white voters, that doesn't sound like protection against racial discrimination. It just sounds like anti-white racial discrimination in a predominantly white country where it's their homeland, where their families have been for generations, and they built the entire country. That doesn't sound like protection from racial discrimination. It doesn't sound like equality. It just sounds like anti-white racism. That's what it sounds like to me. I don't know about you guys. So thank God this gerrymandering case was, it was Louisiana's map particularly. They were trying to go from 1 to 2 black districts out of the 6 in the entire state. And the Supreme Court shot it down and deemed it unconstitutional. And what this resulted in now is the House is actually going to gain quite a few seats in the South. Even the conservative estimates I saw is they're going to gain 12 seats. We may not lose the House, and Trump won't be impeached if that's the case. So all that to say that is a big win, but it's, again, a bare minimum. It's like, how is this allowed in the first place? So since the 1960s, there has been anti-white racism occurring in the redistricting in the South. That's what the Supreme Court just admitted, basically, that this law from the 1960s is unconstitutional, and it's been disproportionately affecting white voters negatively since the 1960s. All the Supreme Court did was give a level playing field to white people. And everybody knows that when white people have a level playing field, they succeed. Everybody knows that. It's very evident. So that is the current events that took a little bit longer than I was expecting. We are about 45 minutes into the stream. And we are going to be discussing in depth the topic of race, as well as Fr Seraphim Rose and his formal canonization, which, again, glory to God. I know so many people are very excited about that. I posted about it yesterday. Like I said, what ended up happening, for those of you that are wondering, basically the information got leaked. There wasn't a formal decision given. And so when the information got leaked that he was canonized, some people high up in ROCOR were kind of upset that it got leaked, and so they tried to say that it wasn't legit, when in fact it was legit. It was just leaked. And then today, I think they probably were motivated by the fact that it was leaked, because today they released the formal canonization of St. Seraphim Rose. And I want to actually read a few excerpts from his book, Nihilism, because this is probably my favorite book by him, because he was ahead of his time, and he gives a lot of transcendental argumentation here. And here I'll retweet this so that you guys can see it. I'm not going to read everything here, but I do want to point out a couple things. So he says this task need not detain us long. Nihilism has been defiled, and quite succinctly, by the fount of philosophical nihilism, Nietzsche, that there is no truth, no absolute state of affairs, no thing in itself. This alone is nihilism, and the most extreme kind. There is no truth. We have encountered the phrase already more than once in this book, and will recur frequently hereafter. For the question of nihilism is most profoundly a question of truth. Indeed, the question of truth. But what is truth? The question is, first of all, one of logic. Before we discuss the content of truth, we must examine the very possibility and the conditions of its postulation. And by truth, we mean, of course, as Nietzsche's denial of it makes explicit, absolute truth, which we have already defined as the dimension of the beginning, the end of things. So I'm going to skip to the next page here. By the way, Nietzsche, I don't quite understand the obsession with Nietzsche. Dostoevsky mogs him. He died miserable and single, and I don't quite understand the obsession with him. I much prefer Dostoevsky, who, by the way, Nietzsche famously said that Dostoevsky was the only philosopher who he felt he learned anything from. So I'll start right here. So if he is pressed, or if his mind spontaneously turns to such questions, the most obvious explanation is usually sufficient to satisfy his curiosity. All truth is empirical. All truth is relative. Either statement, of course, is a self-contradiction. The first statement is itself not empirical at all, but metaphysical. This kind of sounds like a lot of you guys who listen to Jay, sounds like a lot of the stuff that he says. The second is itself an absolute statement. The question of absolute truth is raised first of all for the critical observer by such self-contradictions and the first logical conclusions to which must be led to this. If there's any truth at all, it cannot be merely relative. The first principle of modern science, as of any system of knowledge, are themselves unchangeable and absolute. If they were not, there would be no knowledge at all. Sounds a lot like Jay talking about the possibility of knowledge. Not even this, the most reflective knowledge, for there would be no criteria of which to declassify anything as knowledge of truth. So I'm not going to read all of this. You guys can read it yourself. I retweeted it for you. Here, let me go ahead and put it in the chat as well. But those who like to accuse Jay of being some sort of modernist in his approach to apologetics, you're going to have to say the same thing about St. Seraphim Rose, because here he is arguing effectively the same way. So, and by the way, thank you guys for the super chats. Oh my gosh, wow. Please, the super chat link is pinned down there. Like I said, only through PayPal right now because I don't have monetization on YouTube. But man, I appreciate the super chats. I'm trying to obviously go full time in apologetics and in political commentary, and so I do really appreciate these super chats you guys are sending in. And I'm going to be moving on to the main event of the day, which a lot of you guys tuned in for, which is the topic of race. Now, before I dive into this, I want to talk about the stigma around this topic. So it's very common for people in Orthodox circles and Christian circles to say things like, there's no such thing as race. Race doesn't exist. In Christ, there is no race. There is no Jew nor Gentile. And we're gonna dive into what the saints say about that later on. But I also want to talk about the double standard when it comes to talking about this particular issue. Because look, here's the reality. Just over 100 years ago, the white population in the world was around 30%. Now it's 8%. So in other words, white people are literally going extinct, or at the very least, becoming a severe minority in the global population. And not only are people openly celebrating this, which I will show you a compilation of, not only are people openly celebrating this, but anyone who talks about it gets ostracized as a white supremacist, white nationalist, all these scary labels. That's what I get called, just for talking about the genocide of my people. Because that is what it was. That is what it is. They targeted propaganda campaigns talking about birth rates, telling us in the West to stop having children. And then they pull a bait and switch by changing the propaganda campaign to, hey, you guys aren't having enough babies, so we have to bring all these migrants in. Otherwise, your economy is going to crash. So they told us to stop having babies. And then, after we stopped having babies, They brought in all the third world migrants to save us because our economy is going to crash, because America was built on immigrants. So it's very clear what has happened here. And any other race, if the black population went from 30% to 8% in 120 years, every single one of you virtue signalers would be rallying around all of the activists, all of the black activists, advocating for their race, for their people, for the preservation of their people. Every single one of you virtue signalers will be doing that. But when it's white people, most of you celebrate it. Most of you openly celebrate the fact that white people are on the verge of going extinct. You guys say that that's a good thing. And you call yourself Christians. Is the genocide of an entire race, the ethnic cleansing of an entire race of people from their homelands, is that Christian? No, it's not. It's not. And I'm going to read the quotes later that show that that the Christian view of race has been improperly weaponized by the same entities responsible for Marxism. That's what St. Seraphim Rose says explicitly. He says the same people that are behind Marxism are the ones behind the erasure of race. Because this is what they do. This is what the Jews do. They deracinate your entire identity. See, everybody else gets to have their identity. If you go to a university, you can bring all of your experiences, all your cultural heritage, all the oppression you've experienced, all of it, and everybody will listen. Unless you are a white Christian male, then you have to. Nope, you can't think about race. You can't talk about your religion. You just need to shut up and listen to the black women that are speaking. That's how someone of my demographic is treated in universities. My experiences don't matter. My cultural heritage doesn't matter. My race isn't even real. There's no such thing as whiteness. Oh, really? Then why have you guys been talking about eliminating whiteness for the last several decades if there's no such thing as whiteness? What is this that you've been trying to eradicate? What is this that you've been teaching children and students in university that they need to get rid of? They need to get rid of their whiteness. What is that? What is the whiteness in question? If race doesn't exist, neither does racism, by the way. So that's a quick little, if someone says, oh, race doesn't exist, you say, okay, so racism doesn't exist? Because that logically follows from that. Well, clearly that's ridiculous. So I showed, there's so many compilations of these. It's actually crazy how many of these there are, because there are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of articles openly calling for the eradication of white people. And no Christians seem to want to talk about it. Nobody wants to talk about it. And when I talk about it, I'm a racist white supremacist. Get out of my face. Get out of my face. If this was any other race, you people would be rallying around the activists. Why is it that when I say something pro-white, that automatically is assumed to be an attack on other races? That only happens with white people, by the way. If someone says they're pro-Asian or if someone says they're pro-black, nobody thinks that means anti-white. That's not what people think when they say that. Nope, it's only if someone says they're pro-white. Now all of a sudden it's an attack on other races. How dare you be pro-white? What are you, a white supremacist? You're not a real Christian. Oh, really? So Christ wants an entire race of people that he created to be eradicated off the face of the earth? Is that the Christian view? For decades, this material is all over academia. It's all over the media with little to no backlash, almost zero backlash. And those who do push back against it are deemed racist. They're called fascists. They're called white supremacists. Nobody seems to deal with my actual arguments. It's just name calling. So when I call this out, I just get name called. Nobody actually wants to deal with my arguments. Nothing I'm doing is putting down other races. Talking about my people's heritage, not wanting my people to be genocided off the face of the earth. Why is that an attack on other people? I want to go over a back and forth I had on Twitter yesterday. I posted a thumbnail for this video that said Orthodoxy, the white race, and Fr Seraphim Rose. And I had people accusing me of white supremacy, accusing me of weaponizing the saints for a political gain. So the very name, the white race, just saying the white race is so triggering to these people. I can't even say the name white race without you guys being triggered and assuming I'm a freaking white supremacist. That is slander, by the way. You are slandering me. And many of you are brothers and sisters in the Orthodox Church. How dare you? How dare you say that about another brother in the Orthodox faith? I would never do that to you. So there was this post. Actually, to give the context of this post, I want to show you guys. So a dear brother named Jerome, he goes by, or used to go by Sig. He and I have been friends for years, even before my conversion and before his conversion to Orthodoxy. Now, people have some issues with his views on original sin and things of that nature, but that's not what I'm talking about here. So he posted this. So this is the context, right? So he posted this video about his people becoming Orthodox, black people becoming Orthodox. So I said this. I said, Sig is a dear brother who has been very supportive of me in my defense of my people, my culture, and my racial heritage. Likewise, I admire his desire to do the same for his own and see nothing wrong with it, even if we represent two opposite sides of the racial spectrum. One of his greatest desires is the conversion of his own people in Nigeria, just as mine is the conversion of mine in America. So I had some people that were right-wingers pushing back on me for this because of, Sig he has different views on immigration than me. I'm not saying I agree with Sig, and I disagree on things. We disagree on some things regarding immigration, but he has always supported me because he understands my justification for my views. He's always supported my defense of my people, my culture, and my racial heritage. And he has people that call me racist in his Discord chats and all these things, and he defends me. He defends me against those people. And likewise, I defend him against people that are saying that this video is anti-white. I don't think this is anti-white. Him talking about black people becoming Orthodox. That's not anti-white. There's nothing wrong with his video. Now, there's people that are so sick of the anti-white narrative that they think, hey, when someone says something like this, they're being anti-white. There's things I disagree with Sig on. I'm not saying I agree with everything he believes in, but he's a brother in the faith. He's had my back. So that was why I posted this. So this other clown show, who I'll show you guys here. So this other clown show who decided to attack me randomly because of my freaking thumbnail that literally just says the white race in it. says this, quote, Africans cannot bring racial historical. So Nikolai was like counter signaling Sig. This was like before I made my comment. But he says Africans cannot bring racial historical narratives into Orthodoxy, but Ben Michael can drag the names of saints and the church through the mud, associating them with white nationalism. Ooh, so scary. Without so much as a word being spoken against it or even an eye being batted. Guess what, dude? I am every day I'm getting called racist. Every day I'm getting called a neophyte who's trying to weaponize the saints, even though I didn't have any of these views before becoming Orthodox. I was a cringe race-blind libertarian before I became Orthodox. It was the saints who gave me these views. It was reading the saints. So shout out to all the guys who had my back here. I want to pull up the original attack on me because it was a quote tweet of my thumbnail. Shout out to all the guys that came to my defense, by the way. Fr Seraphim Rose should be canonized as a saint. People like this who use Rose's likeness to legitimize whatever fringe politics they hold, white nationalism, super scary, are the great impediment to his glorification. Do they genuinely believe he would endorse their behavior? What behavior? What behavior? Not wanting my own people to become a minority in my homeland? So shout out to Thaddeus. Shout out to, I don't know who this guy is, but shout out to him. So then he goes on to say, so this person rightfully says that I directly quote and cite the saints, and I don't just make up sentiments. I'm not taking my presuppositions and inserting them into the writings of the saints. It's the total opposite. I'm exegeting the saints, and then I build my opinion based on it. I build my worldview based on what the saints say. So he says, the fact that you're saying this only proves that his propaganda has worked. My propaganda. He takes the saints out of context. What context? And fills in the gaps where he can with his own political convictions. I'd like to see where the saints speak about securing white dominance. You see how he used this scary language? It's all framing. He uses this scary, white dominance over the Western world. So Father Athanasios is a future saint. He just proposed in 2006. Yes, we want to translate this. So he has this beautiful quote, which is an excerpt from the Spiritual Testament of Tobit. This was given in 91. He says this, children, we continue our theme of love for our homeland and our compatriots. We said last time that the homeland is something that is determined by the word of God. In other words, God himself wants there to be borders of people and consequently individual homelands. Thus, our whole earth is divided into homelands that have borders. He's describing homogeneity. There's no way you can contest that what he's saying here is there are homogeneous nations for particular people groups. But while God pays attention to this point that I am about to tell you, while God determines borders for the people, as the apostle says to the Athenians, he has appointed times and demarcations for their dwellings. The boundaries are the borders, and God also arranges how long a people will live. In other words, he defines the preordained times. So he's saying these borders, he's exegeting the verse in Acts, saying that God has preordained these borders. Well, what I want you to notice now is, on the contrary, here, be careful. It is very important. The Antichrist will break the borders of the peoples, and he will become the ruler of the world over the whole world. This is very important. We expect this. In fact, with the argument that because there are wars between peoples, peoples must unite. There must be no borders so that there is no war. Sound familiar? Guys, we gotta unite. It's the Christian thing to do, to unite with all these other people. You're being mean and anti-Christian by upholding borders. But this is the work of the Antichrist. This is determined for us as the fathers interpret the Holy Bible. So if you see what is happening now with Europe, the next step is to have no borders. Then you will say that the Antichrist is coming. All this is preparation for the kingdom, the empire of the Antichrist. So borders are being destroyed, are being watered down in the name of unity, all because of the work of the Antichrist, according to Father Athanasius, who again will be a canonized saint. He just proposed. That couldn't possibly be more clear. Couldn't possibly be more clear. So I gave that quote, this guy with the audacity to say, hold on, I thought I said I was looking for the words from a saint. Give me a break, dude. And I'll give you those too. I have the saints quotes too. Also, notice how I never once spoke about the abolition of borders. In fact, I was very careful in our discussion to maintain that all proper demographic shifts happen legally. Dude, this isn't about legal or illegal. Do you think that when there becomes no borders in Europe and when they try to do it in America, you think that's going to be done illegally? No, it's going to be policy like they're already doing. They effectively already have open borders. They don't even enforce immigration law. So all that stuff is effectively being done legally. There will be open borders legally. Where does he mention anything about illegal or legal? He's talking about the eradication of borders. That's what he's talking about. So don't lecture me about legal or illegal immigration. I don't care. Legal immigration is way worse than illegal right now in the United States and in the UK. London is the rape capital of the world. The rape capital of the world. London, England. Do you think that's because of illegal migrants? Hell no. Hell no. That's because of legal migration from all these Muslim countries like Pakistan. And then we're told, oh, they have to be taught that rape is wrong. If someone needs to be taught that rape is wrong, I don't want them in my country. I don't want them around my women and children. Sorry if that makes me the bad guy. I'll take that one on the nose. I'm going to show you guys the rest of our conversation. Thank you guys for the Venmos as well. Yeah, Streamlabs sucks. I know. This is why please pray for me that I can get my YouTube monetization up because yeah, the monetization right now sucks through Streamlabs. So thank you guys. Like I said, the Streamlabs link is pinned in the comments for super chats that I'll go over at the end, and I'll also go over the Venmos I receive. My Venmo is in my description. So thank you guys for those. So just lastly here, I'm going to go over the back and forth I had with this guy on the other thread. Yeah, don't worry. I'm going to address this objection. People are saying whites are all different. I'm going to address that using the saints because the saints actually refute that. So I will be going over that. All right. So this guy, again, back to this original post where he's saying I'm this big scary white nationalist who's just weaponizing the saints or whatever. So I said, hey, you're slandering my name. At no point have I expressed dominance of one race over another, which is what he claims here. So he literally says, assert dominance of one race over others. Ooh. So at no point have I expressed dominance of one race over another or any racial hierarchy whatsoever. My argument is simply that race is real and that nations all have equal rights of homogeneity. You don't have to agree. Just don't lie about me. It's damaging to your soul. Look, this is my position. You guys want to know what my position is? This is it. Homogeneity, the only two consistent positions are all or none. That's it. Either everybody gets homogeneity or nobody does. Mine is that everybody does. That's my position. You can disagree. Please don't lie about me. It's fine if you want to disagree. Please do not lie about me. Especially if you're a brother in the faith. I don't lie about you. I would never lie about you. You want non-white people in Western countries to remain minorities so that the interests of white people can remain at the forefront of domestic policy. Oh yeah, because we just saw how that works. When Southern Democrats just got busted for treating white votes as less valuable than Black and Hispanic ones with this gerrymandering case. Yeah, so a lot of interests of white people getting boosted artificially around here. What do you call that other than domination? I've gathered this from your words. If this is true, my words are not slander. So I said, do you believe that Nigerians should remain majority in Nigeria, or would you be okay with Europeans becoming the majority there? Obviously, most people would want Nigerians to remain the majority in their own country. That's pretty basic. So he tries to say that, as long as it's not artificial, he'd be okay with that. So his position, this is how ridiculous these guys' position gets, is you have to say that you're okay with Nigerians no longer having a homeland in Nigeria and being replaced by Europeans as long as it happens organically, which, by the way, mass migration into the West has not happened organically. That's nonsense. I'm going to do a full episode that just is dedicated to the Kalergi plan, which is not a conspiracy. It is well-documented history that's found in his book, Practical Idealism, that's been executed meticulously, funded by Jewish bankers. I mean, Kalergi was a Jewish supremacist. He wasn't even a Jew. He was married to a Jew, and he was a blatant Jewish supremacist. So basically, this back and forth continues. He just keeps dodging the questions. And yeah, apartheid state. He thinks so to him, if we remain a majority white country, that's an apartheid state to him. What are you talking about? They use this scary language. They use this scary language to try to gaslight us, to try to say that our position is some sort of extreme one. When in reality, we're the only ones with like a common sense position. Oh yeah, if you have a homeland, you shouldn't be ethnically cleansed from it. I mean, when we came here, we literally gave the indigenous population their own reservations. We allowed them to remain on their land with homogeneity. So we came here, we kicked their ass, and then we allowed them to stay on their land with homogeneity. By the way, all of the accusation that we genocided the indigenous population is total nonsense. Most of their death was from disease. There's zero evidence that the germ theory, we didn't even understand germ theory yet. So the notion that we were using blankets with diseases on them to like try to wipe these people out is total, utter nonsense. In fact, when we got here, when the European settlers got here, they were mortified by the tactics of the indigenous peoples here, because the indigenous would send raids into our camps and particularly target women and children. And the European settlers that were here were used to engaging in warfare with other Europeans where populations such as women and children were off limits. So they were completely caught off guard. They were mortified by the tactics of the natives. And then wrongfully, we ended up creating counter raid parties that ended up actually emulating their tactics, which was not good. But of course, it's always the backlash. It's never the initial act of aggression that occurred by them. That's never what's talked about. And by the way, if you eliminate disease, the casualty rate was about the same on both sides. The casualty rate between us and the indigenous population was about the same. It was about the same on both sides. So the notion that we like genocided these people is nonsense. And not only that, we literally gave them their own homogenous like zones. where they can like self-govern and everything. Like, who does that? Who wins a war with people and then gives the losers their own homogenous zone that we don't even get to touch? What kind of a people does that? Except for white Christians. Can you find, like, just, I would love to know if there's another population who's done something like that. Because that's pretty wild that we allowed that. That is incredibly charitable. And yet we get labeled the bad guy. We get said that people say that we committed genocide against these people. All right. So we are going to move on to what I think a lot of you guys have been waiting for, which is the saints. I got some fire quotes for you guys today. And I pretty much guarantee that I have at least one major one that most of you guys have never heard regarding the white race. So how are you guys doing? We got about 30 minutes left of the stream. I think this has been a great episode. What do you guys think about this episode so far? And by the way, I'm willing to take feedback on my streams. So this show is probably going to remain the same. It's going to be sort of like a news show where I talk about stuff like this. I talk about current events. I talk about race. I talk about the Jews. I talk about all these various topics. And then on top of that, I'm going to start doing like call-ins. So like on TikTok and on YouTube, I'll have a link where people can call in. And look, I'll defend this. I will defend, that nationalism is orthodox. I will defend that mass migration is anti-Christian. And I'm going to do an episode on that too. That'll probably be the same episode as the Calgary one, because I'm going to talk about the different policies under Orthodox monarchies in regards to immigration, because the reality is they were very strict on their immigration policies. So this has been the best consistent viewership that I've had from a stream so far. So glory to God. Thank you guys for that. Thank you for the fire emojis. Christ is risen. Truly, he is risen. We are still celebrating the risen Christ in the Orthodox Church. For those of you that are not Orthodox, you should come over and check out a divine liturgy sometime every Sunday, usually about 9:30 or 10 o'clock. So look up your local Orthodox church, head over and check out liturgy. Please like and subscribe. Please like the live. Please subscribe if you have not subscribed to me. And also, the super chat link is pinned in the comments. So if you wouldn't mind sending me a super chat over on Streamlabs, I will be going over those at the end. My Venmo is also in my description. If you do not have PayPal, I'll go over those at the end as well. So let us dive into the main event, if you will. The main event of the main event, which is the saints on the topic of race. By the way, if someone's claiming that I'm taking the saints out of context, they'll have to actually demonstrate that by showing me what the proper context is. Not only that, but they'll have to show me saints that are in opposition to these saints, because there's been another objection that I've heard. Oh, well, the saints aren't infallible. Well, that's true. But like, what is your justification for your worldview? What is your patristic witness that the white race doesn't exist, that race doesn't exist anymore? What is your patristic witness of that? I'd love to hear that. So we'll start with we're going to start with St. Augustine, and particularly his commentary on Galatians 3:28. So Galatians 3:28 is, of course, the famous verse where St. Paul says there's neither Jew nor Greek, nor slave nor free, nor male nor female. Now, on its face, very obvious that this verse doesn't mean that these things cease to exist, because it literally says male nor female, and gender obviously continues to exist. So it's very clear that St. Paul is merely pointing out that that under Christ, we are all equal. We all created in the image of God. And likewise, under Christ, under the new law, we are all children of God. And that's true. Nobody denies that. Every human being is created in the image of God. Every human being that is an Orthodox Christian is a child of God. Doesn't matter what race you are, that's true. That is still a truth. That's a universal truth across all races and genders. Nobody denies this. I have never met even the most quote unquote racist Orthodox Christians that I have met. They all affirm this. Every single one. So that's actually what racism is. And by the way, ethnophilatism, which was condemned by 3 patriarchs at a council in Constantinople. It was not a universally accepted council, but it's fine. There's nothing wrong with the council. But the council was called because the Bulgarians were trying to appoint only ethnically Bulgarian bishops. And so the council was like, no, you can't do that. And so they condemned what is ethnophilatism, which is discrimination on the basis of ethnicity in the church. So yeah, nobody is saying that if someone of a different ethnicity shows up to your church, you can turn them away. We all agree that the church must welcome everyone for the sake of salvation, regardless of race and ethnicity. Nobody's denying that. That's ethnophilatism. So people that are trying to associate nationalism with ethnophilatism, you guys have no idea what you're talking about. You have no idea what you're talking about. Ethno-nationalism, in the case of the nation, is affirmed by the 2000 Russian Synod. I already read that before. I've posted about it many times. It literally defines the nation as an ethnic community and says that you have an obligation as an Orthodox Christian to that nation, to that ethnic community. So ethno-nationalism, not only is it not condemned, it's actually affirmed by the church. Unless you want to argue that these 2 local councils contradict each other, which is also nonsense. So yeah, ethnophilatism has nothing to do with ethno-nationalism. They're not even remotely related. Not even remotely related. And the only time that the word nationalist shows up in that council of Constantinople is when it says nationalistic tendencies in the church. So you can't bring nationalistic conflicts. So like in the case of Russia-Ukraine, you can't have, do not bring your Russia-Ukraine conflict into the church. We're partaking of the same cup. Don't bring it into the church. That's ethnophilatism. That's what's being condemned in that council. Again, particularly the Bulgarians who wanted to only appoint ethnically Bulgarian bishops. Yeah, you can't do that. Sorry. You can't only appoint ethnically Bulgarian bishops in your jurisdiction. That's not okay. Yeah, no, that is understandable. By the way, still, again, not a universal council. So those that want to reject the 2000 Russian Synod, you can also reject the Council of Constantinople because it wasn't universally held to. All right. Without further ado, been building up to this a lot. St. Augustine. Difference of race or condition or sex is indeed taken away by the unity of faith, but it remains embedded in our mortal interactions. And in the journey of this life, the apostles themselves teach that it is to be respected. For we observe in the unity of faith that there are no such distinctions. Yet within the orders of this life, they persist. So we walk this path in a way that the name and doctrine of God will not be blasphemed. It is not out of fear or anger that we wish to offend others, but also on account of conscience, so that we may do these things not in mere profession, as if for the eyes of men, but with the pure love towards God. So he literally addresses the virtue signalers. He's saying, look, we're not trying to offend anybody, but the truth of the matter is that, yes, we're all equal in Christ. So in the unity of the faith, yeah, gender and race, they don't exist in the unity of the faith, but they still remain embedded in our mortal life. That's what he's saying. He's explaining Galatians 3:28. He's helping us understand what St. Paul is saying here. And it's the obvious interpretation given the fact that male, he says male or female. And it's very obvious that males and females, that gender still remains, despite the fact that we're all equal under Christ. Nobody's denying that we're all equal under Christ. But race is real and race exists, according to St. Augustine. How about St. John Chrysostom? So a common reference that people cite in these conversations is 1 Timothy 5:8. And 1 Timothy 5:8 effectively talks about how if you do not provide for your own, you're worse than an unbeliever. St. Paul says that if you don't provide for your own people, that if you do not protect your own people, you're worse than an unbeliever. And he says, especially your immediate family. So he's not just talking about the immediate family. He's talking about your blood, your extended bloodline. You have to provide for and protect, or you're worse than an unbeliever. And this is St. John Chrysostom extrapolates on this. He says this: if any not provide for his own, especially for those of his own house, that is, those who are nearly related to him, he is worse than an infidel. And so says Isaiah, the chief of the prophets, you shall not overlook your kinsmen of your own seed. For if a man deserts those who are united by ties of kindred and affinity, how shall he be affectionate towards others? It was the design of God in uniting us by the ties of kindred to afford us many opportunities of doing good to one another. When therefore you neglect a duty which infidels perform, have you not denied the faith? Have you not denied the faith? He's saying if you do not provide for your bloodline, you're denying the faith. For it is not faith merely to profess belief, but do the works worthy of faith. Because it is not the same thing to neglect our kindred as it is to neglect a stranger. That's Ordo Amoris from St. Augustine. How should it be? But the fault is greater here to desert one known than one who is unknown to us. He's saying, look, like you have a responsibility to your bloodline as a priority above everybody else. That doesn't mean you reject charity to other people who are not your bloodline. But he's saying, look, and this can be applied to the nation. He's saying, look, if you're sending all of these missionaries to the rest of the world and you're doing all these charity events across the world, but your own people are starving, your own people have not heard of the gospel, you're worse than an unbeliever. Doesn't that sound familiar? Doesn't that sound like modern evangelicalism? Where we're sending all these people across the country, across the world rather, and they're doing all these charity events when there's homeless on the street here in America. Our children are being slaughtered by the millions. Millions of children don't have parents to raise them. They're starving. They're homeless. They're on the street. People can't afford to freaking pay to fill up their car. And our priority as Christians is international missions. What about domestic missions? What about taking care of our own people? St. John Chrysostom is saying, if you misplace that priority, you're worse than an unbeliever. That's what he's saying. So it doesn't mean we reject these other people. It means we need to start with caring for our own. If your kids are starving and your neighbor's kids are starving, you need to feed your kids first. That's obvious. That's not an attack on the neighbor's kids. But your responsibility first and foremost is to your children, to your blood, caring for your blood. How about Father Seraphim Rose, Saint Seraphim Rose? He had some stuff to say about this. He had some good stuff to say about this. So this is Signs of the Times Part 2. I posted this yesterday. For those of you that want to read the full thing, I posted the source. He says this. This particular idea of women's liberation can be traced back at least 200 years. Of course, you can go back even before that, but its present form goes back at least 200 years to the forerunners of Karl Marx and the early socialists. So he's saying that Marx is responsible for modern feminism. Karl Marx, the Jewish individual, is responsible for feminism. He says this, these socialists were talking about a great new utopian age, which is going to come when all distinctions of class and race and religion and so forth are abolished. There will be a great new society, they said, when everybody is equal. This idea, of course, was based originally upon Christianity, but it distorted Christianity and amounted to its opposite. So St. Seraphim Rose is saying here that socialists, Marxists, they're the ones behind the erasure of race in the name of equality. And he's saying this was originally the original Christian idea that we're all equal under Christ is being distorted to the extent that it is now its opposite. Now it's the work of the Antichrist, just like Father Athanasius said earlier. So according to St. Seraphim Rose, if you are advocating for the erasure of race, you are pushing the Marxist agenda of the Antichrist. And you are the opposite. You are pushing something that is opposite of Christianity. Isn't that interesting? But, oh yeah, Ben, you're just weaponizing the saints for your political agenda. Bro, what other possible context could there be here? Please enlighten me on what else this could mean. You can disagree with St. Seraphim Rose. That's fine. That's a more honest position than to say that he's saying something other than that right here. That is very clearly what he's saying. Okay, I saved the best for last. You guys are going to love this one. Shout out to my brother Dimitri on X over at World War Now because he showed me this. This is for people who say that there is no such thing as the white race. So someone asked earlier about the objection that someone said enlarged. Oh, you guys figured it out. You guys figured out how to read it. I could try to make the screen bigger in the future. Okay, there's a lot of people saying to make it bigger. I'm sorry. Here, I'll do that. This should help. When I go to share screen, it should be better. There we go. Yeah, that should be better. Okay. You guys are probably watching on your phones. That's probably why. Let me see if I can maybe make this. Okay. I made this bigger now so that people can see. Hang on. it needs to translate the whole page before I can control F it. So give me a second here. How you guys doing? Look at our viewership, man. We've been chilling at about 150. We broke 160 once. I don't know if we broke 170 this time. We broke 170 last time. I'm going to be pissed if this doesn't properly translate like it did last night. This is an untranslated work by St Nikolai of Serbia. So I'm just working on. If not, I have the translation, but I want to actually show you guys. There we go. Okay. Well, that's 2. There's 6 instances of it though. So yeah, shout out to my buddies over at World War Now, because they were the ones who showed me this, and it refutes these nonsense people that that say there's no such thing as the white race. All right. Okay. Let me make sure it at least has the. Yeah, okay. It at least has the main one that I want. Okay. So, all right. Oh, you guys are funny. You guys are funny. All right. You guys ready? All right, here we go. So this is St. Nikolai of Serbia. There, is that big enough for you? My goodness. No, thank you for the feedback. I do actually appreciate it. I might edit it later so I can make the screen actual bigger. For those of you who are watching on a laptop, was it also too small? Or is it just people on phones? Please let me know. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate the support. All right. And by the way, after this, I'm going to be going over super chats. So if you want to send in a super chat via Streamlabs, it's pinned in the comments, the link to Streamlabs. And then also my Venmo is in my description. All right. So here we go. So you guys often hear, right, that there's no such thing as the white race. Oh, there's no such thing as this ethnic Europeans, uniting under one category called race. So we already established that race is real. Race is a subcategory of species. So all humans are the same species, and then you have a subcategory of that, which is race, and then a subcategory of race is ethnicity. And there are certain ethnicities that, if they share racial heritage, are more closely related to other ethnicities of the same race, which is obvious. Okay, this is the basic understanding of what race is. Laptop and better now. Okay, it was too small on the laptop before. Okay, I'll make sure to zoom in. Going forward. All right. So Saint Nikolai of Serbia wrote. This is one of his most famous texts called "War and the Bible." You can go in here, and you can see all the times that he talks about the white race. He mentions it. I was able to find 6 occurrences. It's only showing 5 because the whole thing wasn't translated. It's all over this text. He's talking about the white race, he's talking about the European identity of the white race. Right here. This is like, what is even the response to this? What is the response to this? It's like, these peoples are of the white race, talking about Europe and America. Hello? Like, what else do you want from me, man? So race isn't real? Well, not according to St. Nikolai of Serbia. I've found 6 uses just in here. I like this quote here. The white race can change its spirit, correct its thoughts, tame its longings for things that have no true value, and go to a good goal after the one who said, I am the way. It can if it wants to, but will he want to? There is only one step from falling into the abyss to escaping from it and being safe. Will people want to recreate? Only one step from the terrible abyss over which they stand. God is waiting for an answer to this question. He waits like a father, loving and caring. Even if they give God a negative answer every day, God is waiting in his mercy and love. He waits to see if he will hear a good answer from some people in order to avert the catastrophe. So he's talking about a racial identity. He's talking about it in the context of the European race, and he calls it the white race. What else do you want from me, man? This is very clearly... Here, I will link this in the comments for you guys. So you guys can save this link and use it on anybody who tries to tell you that there is no such thing as race anymore, or that race doesn't exist or something of that nature. That's fine if you have that opinion. What saint are you citing? Just curious. Maybe they can present a saint. But at the very least, this is a saint who is telling us that this is a real thing. It's a real identity. It really exists. So that's what I had for you guys. There are quite a few more quotes that are literally, I can't read them because they are so harsh. Like there's quotes from saints that I fear would... What's the word here? I would fear reading them to you guys. Because I don't want anyone to get scandalized. Okay? So all you need to know is this, okay? And actually, if you listen to our World War Now episode, that is going to be released here shortly, Dimitri actually reads one of the quotes that I'm talking about. He reads one of the quotes that I'm talking about. You know what? I'm going to show you guys one, so you see what I'm talking about. I'm going to show you one of them. Because this shows that the way that these, especially the Russian Orthodox and the other ethnic Orthodox across the pond, the way they talk about these things is like so radically different than the way, like, I'm gaslit and said I'm racist when this is how the saints spoke. Like, so this is a holy archbishop who is actually I believe he's actually a canonized saint now. He says this: the Russian Orthodox people must have one party, the Church People's Party. This is the kind of socialism, the kind of organization that will not allow either a Jew, a Swede, or a Chinese to penetrate our family and ruin everything. So this is how the saints speak, but I'm the racist one just because I don't want my people to be eradicated off the face of the earth, and I believe that race exists. When this is how our saints speak. And my view is not Orthodox. And I'm just bringing Protestant presuppositions into Orthodoxy. Give me a break, dude. When that's how the saints speak, give me a freaking break. Like, that's a little that's a little harsh to me. like that quote is a little bit harsh. Like, I'm not going to lie. Taken a little bit far, in my opinion. So, but he's a saint. Just saying. So this is how they speak. All right. Great stream today, I think. I'm going to go over the super chats. Yes, very different concepts of race. Yeah, he said not even a Swede. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to go over the super chats here, and also just to plug myself. So please like and subscribe the live so that once this gets published, it gets pushed out to the algorithm, because the more you guys like and subscribe, the more it will do that. And so please like the live, please subscribe, and then I'm going to go over super chats here. And other than that, I am Real Ben Michael on primarily Instagram and Twitter. So give me a follow over there. I guess the Slavs have something against the Swedes, according to Val. Val Orthodox is a dear brother. Give him a follow or subscribe. He's a solid guy. Love his content, and he's got good work, especially on the false dichotomy of Jews or Muslims. We don't like both. We don't like either of their ideologies over here. We don't accept these stupid false dichotomies. We don't do events where we have a woman in a hijab as a keynote speaker at an event. We don't do stupid shit like that around here. All right. Christian Helly 77 asks me, he says, I apologize, love your content. Please unblock me on X. Okay, I'll unblock you, bro. Hey, sometimes things get heated, and I do appreciate. I regularly have people reach out to me, or they also ask me to ask Jay to unblock them, and so sometimes I'm like an intercessor to Jay. I listen. It's never personal. There's just so many trolls. You really don't understand it until you're an actual creator, and you're just constantly receiving trolls. So I will unblock you, though, if I can find your account, if that's your proper handle. Lazarus says, I hate to sound like a black pillar, but at this point, I don't know how we turn things around without extreme violence. People stealing our country do not care about laws. I am very anti-violence. I believe that right now we need to work on infiltrating the GOP. This is something that Andrew Wilson gets right. I don't agree with everything he says, especially his takes on Trump. But Andrew Wilson is correct that we need to be infiltrating the GOP. That is the solution at this point, not violence. And I pointed out earlier and other times that Kodrianu was he would actually get attacked, and he would intentionally not lash out. He would allow himself to get beaten because he knew that it would be detrimental to the movement if he did. Val asks, what is an American to you? How many generations would someone need to be in the U.S. to be considered an American? I would say it is a little bit ambiguous. I would say give or take 3 generations of experiencing ethnogenesis would be sufficient. And obviously intermarrying and assimilating with the local population. I think after 3 generations definitely would be ethnically an American. Now, this is ambiguous, and so a lot of people will say, sorry, it's not ambiguous, it's nuanced, and so a lot of people will take that and they'll weaponize it, and they'll say, American doesn't mean anything, which is incorrect. If you think about I've heard the example of the Amazon rainforest before. There's no actual defined starting or ending point of the Amazon rainforest, but there is still an objective location of where the Amazon rainforest exists, and so and where it is located. And so the same thing is true with an American. There might be some exceptions to the rule. However, the normative American identity is European migrants who are Christian, Europeans, not necessarily migrants, but Europeans who either came here as pioneers or settlers, and then in the 20th century as migrants and experienced ethnogenesis. They intermarried, they assimilated, they adopted the language and the dialect and the culture and the religion and all these things. That is what American identity is. And so trying to apply it on the individual basis is very difficult. because it does get nuanced when we're talking about individuals. So it's much easier to talk about these things normatively, that there is a dominant culture, a dominant identity. The same is true in like Russia, where like 20% of the population is really, I would say, non-Russian. Like they're Muslims, they're non-white. But that doesn't mean that Russia has lost its identity, because its primary identity is still majority Russian, both ethnically, religiously, culturally, and all these things. So I would say that provided that the dominant culture, the dominant race, the dominant religion all remains as such, then the nation remains its identity, and certain individuals are welcome as exceptions to the rule, but not the rule itself. So that's what I would say to that. Hope that makes sense. I want to go over, I think I got a couple Venmos here. Thank you. Brooke did not leave a comment. Maverick says, hey brother, couldn't get Streamlabs to work. It's pretty bad. Thanks for replying to my DM on Twitter, and glory to God for the canonization of St. Seraphim Rose. Hail Christ and hail our people. Amen. All right. Well, episode 4 is in the books. Please pray that I get accepted for monetization for my Thursday stream. I'm tired of having to use Streamlabs for this nonsense, because I want to be able to actually display stuff, and I want to be able to and make it easier for you guys to support me with memberships and things of that nature. All right. Well, glory to God. Make sure you guys, like I said, please subscribe. Please go follow me on other platforms at Real Ben Michael on all platforms. And I will see you guys Thursday at 2 o'clock Eastern time over here on my YouTube. Thanks, guys.